My family called me the ugly high school grad and disowned me. Sure, 10 years later, they regret it. I stumbled across them at my sister's wedding, and her new husband casually asked, "Hey, do you know her?" With a sly smile, I shot back, "Oh, more than you think." I'll never forget the look on their faces when I walked into the reception hall at my younger sister Sarah's wedding. It was a big deal. 10 whole years since my family had kicked me out. 10 years since they decided I didn't fit their mold of beauty and success. The invite had arrived at my office about 3 weeks ago in this super fancy envelope with gold lettering, announcing Sarah Martinez's marriage to Michael Fuentes, who just happened to be the son of the city's top real estate bigwig. Staring at that glossy paper between my fingers, the past hit me hard, like a freezing wave. After all the silence, why now? Why invite me to celebrate a family happiness they ruined for me years ago? Throughout my teen years, I was always the odd one out in the family. Sarah was the princess, with her golden hair and flawless smile, while I was the awkward one with braces, thick glasses, and awful acne. "Lucy, you really should make more effort with your appearance," my mom would say over and over, as if it was just a matter of choice, and not the unlucky result of genetics and teenage hormones. My dad barely acknowledged me during family dinners, obsessed as he was with appearances. Everything turned on its head the night of my graduation. I happened to overhear my dad on the phone, talking to a business partner. "Yeah, my daughter Sarah is the gem of the family. Unfortunately, the older one, well, let's just say she didn't inherit the good genes." An ugly graduate doesn't reflect well on our family business image. Those words cut deep, like poison daggers, and the humiliation was unbearable. But the worst was still to come. The next day, through tears, I confronted my parents. I told them I heard their conversation and knew what they thought of me. Instead of apologizing, my father got angry. "Now you're eavesdropping," he snapped. "What did you expect to hear? It's the truth, Lucy. Sarah has always been the public face of this family. You just don't fit into our plans." My mother just nodded along, as if she were in his shadow. That same night, feeling completely defeated, I packed my bags and left. No one called to ask me to come back. No apologies, just silence. A month later, some distant cousin let it slip that they had even rewritten the family will to cut me out. That toxic family decided I was no longer a part of them. Years went by, and I turned my anger into motivation. Constructive revenge, you might say. I moved to a new city, juggled a bunch of jobs, and worked my way through a business administration degree. The acne cleared up. I swapped my glasses for contacts, and I got into shape. But the biggest change was inside. I built my own financial consulting firm and, ironically, ended up advising several of our family businesses' competitors. Every step I took was a silent message to the family that had rejected me. They might not need me, but the world sure did. When I decided to go to the wedding, it wasn't about making peace. It was about justice. I wanted them to see who I'd become, not because of them, but in spite of them. I wore a red dress that showed off how far I'd come, with elegant accessories and makeup that highlighted the features they once mocked. When I walked into the swanky hotel for the ceremony, I felt the stares. No one recognized me, but everyone was curious about the confident woman I had become. The ceremony was picture perfect, as everything my family planned always was. Sarah was stunning in her designer gown, and Michael looked at her with obvious adoration. From my seat in the back, I watched my parents, now gray-haired, but still with that air of superiority. As the reception got underway, I decided it was time to make my grand entrance. I strolled up to the main table, where Sarah and Michael were soaking up the congratulations. When my turn came, Sarah's eyes nearly popped out of her head. "Lucy?" she whispered, not quite believing it. Michael, looking puzzled, glanced at Sarah and then at me. "Do you know her?" he asked. I smiled, feeling the weight of a decade of silence lift off my shoulders. "More than you think," I said smoothly. "I'm her older sister." "Sister?" Michael said, blinking in surprise as he looked back and forth between us. "You never mentioned having a sister." Sarah lost all color in her face, silently pleading with me not to make a scene. Behind her, I noticed my parents approaching, looking like they'd seen a ghost, caught somewhere between surprise and horror. My dad was the first to regain his composure, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What an unexpected surprise, Lucy. We weren't sure if you'd come," he said evenly, using that businesslike tone he reserved for when things didn't go as planned. The toxic family that rejected me was now struggling to uphold appearances in front of their new wealthy son-in-law. "How could I possibly miss my only sister's wedding, right?" I replied with a polite grin. "After all, family is everything. Isn't that what you always said, Dad?" I watched as a muscle in his jaw twitched. My mom came over and hugged me awkwardly, like she was playing a part in a play. "You look different," she commented, taking in the new me from head to toe. I could see her surprise at my transformation. I was no longer the insecure teen with skin issues and braces. Standing before her was a confident, successful woman, and yes, a beautiful one, too. 10 years can change a person, I replied, maintaining my composure, especially when you have to rebuild your life from the ground up. The hint wasn't lost on anyone. Michael, still visibly confused, tried to break the tension, saying, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Lucy. Sarah never—" Well, I didn't know I had a sister-in-law. He reached out to shake my hand, and I accepted firmly. "There's a lot about the Martinez family you still don't know, Michael," I said with a knowing smile. The tension in the room was almost unbearable, with Sarah trying to manage the situation like the perfectly poised princess she always was. In contrast, Lucy had long since chosen her own path. Quickly explaining to her husband, she remarked, "We've had our differences," to which I incredulously repeated, "What a graceful way to say they cast me out for not meeting their aesthetic ideals." The humiliation I endured in this family deserves a more honest label than just differences of opinion, Sarah. A strained silence cloaked our little gathering, drawing the attention of nearby guests who sensed something was amiss. My father, ever worried about appearances, stepped in and softly but firmly said, "This isn't the time or place, Lucy. It's your sister's special day." Reluctantly, I agreed, not wanting to disrupt another family event. I had done enough of that at my own graduation when you dubbed me the ugly graduate who wasn't an asset to the company's image. My father turned pale, never expecting I had heard those exact words. Michael, looking surprised, turned to my father. "I don't know what you're talking about," he tried to deny. "I think you know perfectly well," I responded calmly. "But, as you said, this is Sarah's day. Let's enjoy the party." I strolled away with grace, leaving them shocked and feeling their stares as I made my way to the bar. The real game was just beginning, and it would be as cold and calculated as I had planned. At the bar, a man in a sharp, dark suit approached, offering me a glass of champagne. "Impressive entrance," he noted. "Gabriel Vega," he introduced himself, "Michael's partner at the real estate firm." "Lucy Martinez," I replied, accepting the glass. "Are you related to the bride and groom?" he asked sincerely. "Sarah's older sister, the one nobody talks about," I said with a sardonic smile. Gabriel eyed me with keen interest. "I worked with your father on some projects years back," he shared. "An interesting man. A diplomatic way to put it," I chuckled softly. "Diplomacy is my forte," Gabriel smiled, "though I sense you're more for straightforward honesty." "Honesty cost me my place in this family, so yes, I value it greatly," I replied. Our chat was interrupted when the master of ceremonies announced the newlyweds' first dance. Everyone gathered around as Sarah and Michael danced to a soft ballad. She was as flawless as ever, the focus of everyone's admiration. The incontestable favorite. Seems there's a fascinating story behind your absence from family photos, Gabriel observed, noting where my attention was. A story of a toxic family with impossible expectations, I answered plainly. I'd love to hear it someday, Gabriel responded. Something in his gaze suggested it was more than mere curiosity. Why the interest? I asked bluntly. Gabriel paused before answering. Let's say your father and I didn't part ways on the best of terms, and I suspect you may hold valuable insights. So I wasn't the only one with unresolved issues with Edward Martinez. Intrigue. Ewing. The celebration continued, and I noticed my parents' efforts to keep me away from key guests, especially Michael's family. They were clearly concerned about what I might divulge. Sarah sent anxious looks my way whenever I neared any group she was engaging with. During dinner, they seated me at a distant table with far-off cousins and peripheral friends. Justice was still a distant dream, but I had my own strategies. As the time for speeches arrived, I saw my father stand, glass in hand, to commence the traditional father of the bride speech. "Dear friends and family," he began, his voice seasoned to captivate. "Today marks one of the happiest days of my life, seeing my daughter, Sarah, my greatest pride, marry Michael." As he continued with clichés about family love and paternal pride, anger simmered inside me. How could this man, who cut me from his life for not meeting his standards of beauty, speak of family love? As he concluded to applause, the master of ceremonies invited others to share words of good wishes with the newlyweds. Without hesitation, I rose and approached the microphone. I saw immediate alarm in my parents' eyes and horror on Sarah's face. They had no idea what I would say, and that fear was what I sought to evoke. I took the microphone and smiled at the audience. "Good evening, everyone. I'm Lucy Martinez, Sarah's older sister." A murmur of surprise spread through the room. Many guests were unaware Sarah even had a sister. "For those wondering why you've never seen me at family events," I continued, "let's just say I've been carving my own path away from here." I saw my father start to rise, but my mother stopped him, likely fearing that any interruption would cause more scandal. "Sarah," I directly addressed my sister, "you were always the star, the perfect child. Today, seeing you so radiant, I understand why." I paused dramatically, the room holding its collective breath for a juicy revelation. "I wish you all the happiness in the world. And to you, Michael," I turned to my new brother-in-law, "I wish you the wisdom to truly know the family you're joining." I left the mic and returned to my seat amid polite applause and puzzled looks. I hadn't said anything overtly offensive, but the underlying message was clear to those who needed to hear it. A short while later, as dessert was served, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Michael. "Can we talk for a moment?" he asked seriously. I followed him to a quiet corner of the room. "Your speech was intriguing," he remarked. "I was fairly discreet considering the circumstances," I replied. "What circumstances exactly?" Michael inquired, genuine curiosity in his eyes. "Sarah barely mentioned you, and when she did, she said you had distanced yourself voluntarily due to personal differences." I weighed my options, considering what to reveal. So there I was, chatting with Michael, thinking about whether to spill everything and potentially mess up my sister's wedding night. Let's be real, family stuff is messy and tricky. I finally decided to be upfront with him and said, "Look, the Martinez family has sky-high standards for success and beauty. I didn't make the cut, so they basically showed me the door." Michael looked pretty shocked and asked, "Are you saying they kicked you out?" I just told him that he might want to get familiar with the family he's married into, especially if kids are in the future. His face changed, and I could tell I'd given him a lot to think about. "There's more you're not telling me, right?" he pressed on. Right then, Sarah walked up, looking all alarmed. The first round of revenge was served, but the main dish was yet to come. "Michael, darling, they want you for photos with your parents," she said sweetly, though her eyes were daggers aimed at me. "Of course, I'm coming right away," Michael responded, trying to keep it together. As he left, he mentioned wanting to talk later. "Whenever you like," I answered coolly. Once Michael was out of earshot, Sarah dropped her sweet act. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed. "You've been missing for 10 years, and you come back just to wreck things?" I just kept my cool and said, "I'm just having a polite chat with my new brother-in-law, unlike you hiding the truth about our toxic family." Sarah shot back in a low but sharp tone. "Truth? You were always jealous of me, wanting everything I had." Her words made me laugh sarcastically. "Jealous? No, Sarah. I never wanted your looks or popularity. I just wanted a family that accepted me for who I am. But I guess that was too much to ask." "You left," she remembered, her voice dripping with disdain. "No one kicked you out." "Really? Rewriting history now to suit your perfect narrative. Classic Martinez behavior." Despite the anger bubbling inside, I stayed calm. "Did you mention to Michael how Dad changed the will a month after I took off, or how he made sure I couldn't find work in the city?" Sarah paled slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do. You witnessed it all when Dad called his connections to sabotage my career." Seeing her look away confirmed I was hitting the mark. "You know, Sarah, for years I thought I hated you and this whole family for what you did. But now I realize I should be grateful." Her surprise was evident. "If you hadn't pushed me away, I wouldn't have discovered my strength, started my own company from scratch, or experienced the satisfaction of succeeding on my own terms." "Company?" she asked, something akin to envy flickering in her eyes. "Yep, financial consulting. We even worked with some of Dad's competitors. Last year, we nearly tanked his Monteverde project." Her eyes widened as it dawned on her that I was the force behind that blow to Dad. "That was your revenge," she murmured. "That was business," I corrected. "The revenge is just beginning tonight." Before she could retort, Gabriel came over. "Sorry to interrupt the family meeting," he said, with a smile that showed he wasn't sorry at all. "Lucy, care for a dance?" I accepted, leaving Sarah speechless. As we danced, Gabriel observed, "Your family reunion seems intense." "You can't resolve 10 years of silence and lies with a friendly chat," I replied. "Your dad's been watching us pretty intently," Gabriel noted. I glanced and saw the mix of anger and concern on my dad's face. "What's your issue with my dad?" I asked Gabriel. With a knowing smile, he said, "Edward Martinez has a way of doing business that involves taking others' ideas and ditching those he finds useless." "That sounds about right," I agreed bitterly. Gabriel added, "I was his protege for 3 years, until he took credit for my real estate investment system, then fired me over irreconcilable differences." "Typical. That's his specialty," I said as we danced on. Michael, meanwhile, was watching us again. As the music ended, Gabriel walked me back to my spot. But Michael stopped us. "Lucy, meet my parents," he said formally. Clearly, this wasn't part of the plan my parents had. Trying to act natural, I responded, "Sure, I'd love to." As Michael led me to his parents, my mom whispered something to my dad, who quickly broke from his conversation and came over. "Mom, Dad," Michael introduced. "This is Lucy Martinez, Sarah's older sister." Frank Fuentes, the family patriarch, sized me up with interest and said, "I didn't know Sarah had a sister." "Seems like that's the consensus tonight," I noted with a smile. My father inserted himself, his voice attempting casual, "Lucy's been away from family events for a while." "Yep, it's been 10 years, I clarified. "I decided to pursue my own business path." Frank perked up at that. "Business? What do you do, Lucy?" Before I could answer, my father tried to change the subject. Lucy was always the rebel. "Back when I decided to walk away from the family business, It was evident I wanted to carve out my own path and do something totally different. I introduced myself to Frank with a sense of pride, saying, "Hey, I'm the founder and CEO of Altus Consultants," while completely tuning out my father's attempt to interrupt. I specialize in financial restructuring and strategic acquisitions. And from the look in Frank Fuentes' eyes, he recognized exactly who I was. "Altus, the firm that helped with the Torres-Mendoza merger last year?" he asked. "That's the one," I confirmed, feeling pretty good about it. Frank seemed genuinely impressed, saying, "That merger really shook up the real estate market in the South." I thanked him, secretly relishing the look of shock and unease on my dad's face, while adding, "We always aim to exceed what's expected." My father, trying to regain some control, awkwardly laughed and said, "Lucy's always been very ambitious. I never thought she'd achieve such heights without any family help." Frank, addressing him directly, remarked, "Sometimes, Edward, the most talented people thrive when they're given the freedom to soar on their own." Turning back to me, he added, "Lucy, I'd love to chat about potential collaborations. My company is looking at expanding and could really use your expertise." I handed him my business card, noticing my dad's disbelief. As the conversation flowed, it was clear that Frank Fuentes, my sister's father-in-law and a highly respected businessman, was quite taken with my accomplishments. The humiliation I once felt began to transform into a sweet sense of justice, especially in front of those who had once looked down on me. When we eventually parted ways, Michael, my sister Sarah's new husband, pulled me aside, visibly puzzled. "I don't get it," he said, clearly confused. "If you're so successful and well-regarded, why does your family act like you're some kind of embarrassing secret?" This was my moment of truth, a chance for revenge by exposing the harsh reality of the Martinez family to its newest member. "Michael," I began, "the answer to that could change how you see your new family. Are you sure you want to know right on your wedding night?" He hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him. "I need to understand what I've married into," he admitted. I took a deep breath and said, "I was disinherited and shoved out of the family because, according to my father, I wasn't good-looking enough." Seeing his disbelief, I explained further. Dad built his empire on perfect appearances. Sarah, with her natural beauty, was always his pride and joy socially. I, on the other hand, with my teenage acne, braces, and awkwardness, was supposedly a letdown. Michael looked genuinely horrified. "That's inhumane," he said. I told him about my graduation night when I overheard Dad calling me the ugly graduate who tarnished the family's image. When I confronted him, he didn't bother denying it and stated outright that I didn't fit into his vision for the family. Not long after, I discovered that they had rewritten the will to cut me out completely. I watched Michael slowly piece it all together, realizing why Sarah had never mentioned having a sister. "Was Sarah okay with this?" he finally asked. I replied sadly, "Sarah has always been the perfect daughter, following Dad's orders to the letter. She never stood up for me or reached out. It was easier for them to act as though I didn't exist." Michael ran his hand through his hair, clearly rattled. "I can't believe I got married without knowing something so fundamental about Sarah and her family." At that moment, I realized my real victory didn't lie in ruining Sarah's life or publicly outing my parents. True justice was in reclaiming my story and letting the chips fall where they may. "I didn't come here to wreck your marriage, Michael," I said sincerely. "I came to fight for my place and to show them I'm not destroyed. What you do with this information is up to you." Our conversation got cut short by the announcement of the bouquet toss. All the single ladies gathered on the dance floor, while Sarah, glowing in her wedding dress, prepped for the big throw. From my spot, I noticed my mom whispering something to Sarah, then glancing over at me. Sarah nodded subtly, and I realized they were planning one last public snub. "All single ladies to the dance floor!" the master of ceremonies called out enthusiastically. A group of young women gathered excitedly as Sarah stepped onto a flowery stage. Gabriel joined me with a glass of champagne, teasing, "Not taking part in the desperate single ladies tradition." "I think I'll skip it," I replied with a grin, watching the scene unfold. "I have a feeling that Bouquet is going to avoid me like the plague." From her elevated spot, Sarah scanned the crowd, and when her eyes landed on me, she wore a familiar smile, the one she used when she was about to snag something I wanted. My mom, standing off to the side, gave a discreet nod. "Family traditions are fascinating," Gabriel noted, following my gaze, "especially when they're loaded with hidden meanings." I nodded. In the Martinez family, nothing's by accident. Every gesture, every word, every omission serves a purpose. Sarah turned, ready to throw the bouquet. The single ladies got all excited, reaching up with eager hands. With a dramatic flair, she tossed it right toward a young woman who, based on her resemblance to Michael, had to be his cousin. Another symbolic act of disowning me, so subtle that only I could interpret it. The message was loud and clear. Even in the smallest traditions, I was still the odd one out, the one who didn't deserve so much as a chance to catch a bridal bouquet. "Predictable," I muttered to myself. Gabriel watched me closely, asking, "Does it bother you?" "No," I answered honestly. "It just proves that walking away and building my life without them was the right call." The party went on, and I could tell Michael was keeping his distance from Sarah, clearly affected by our talk. My parents sensed something was amiss and doubled down on their efforts to keep the newlyweds busy with photos, introductions, and little activities, all to keep them from talking to me. As the final toast approached, my father stood up too. As he took the microphone once more, you could see the whole evening's tension etched on his face. Yet his voice remained unwaveringly confident and commanding, as was typical of him. "Dear friends, family, and honored guests," he began with a serious air. "Before we wrap up this fantastic event, I want to express my gratitude to each of you for being here on such an important day for our family." He paused for a moment, clearly honing his message. "As a father, there's nothing more satisfying than witnessing your daughter reach her potential and find true happiness. Sarah has always embodied what we, the Martinez family, stand for: beauty, elegance, intelligence, and unwavering commitment." Every word felt like a subtle jab at me, underscoring how Sarah epitomized everything I was not, everything I was never expected to be to carry the Martinez name. Today, as she joins Michael, we are not just celebrating the love of two remarkable people, but also the merging of two families that share similar values and dreams. With that, he held his glass up high, toasting Sarah and Michael, and to the promising future awaiting them. Everyone clapped and took a sip. As the cheers faded, an unexpected development occurred. Frank Fuentes, Michael's father, stood up, glass in hand. "I have a few words to add," he spoke with an authority that instantly commanded attention. "Tonight has revealed a lot," he continued, casting a direct look at my dad. "I've discovered that what's on the surface can often be misleading, and that sometimes a family's true talent stays hidden or is purposefully kept under wraps." A wave of murmurs swept through the room as my father visibly tensed. "I'm thrilled to announce," Frank carried on, "that alongside celebrating our children's marriage, I'm also marking the start of a professional partnership with a truly remarkable businesswoman who, interestingly enough, is from the Martinez clan." He turned to me saying, "Lucy, your strategic vision and achievements at Altus Consultants are precisely what the Fuentes Corporation requires for our upcoming growth plans." The room fell into a stunned silence. All eyes turned to me, including my parents, who seemed to be caught between shock and disbelief. "It will be a privilege to work with you, Mr. Frank," I responded confidently. "The honor is mine," he replied, adding, "Sometimes the most precious gems are those that some fail to appreciate." This last comment directed to my father, who looked as pale as a ghost. For years I had faced humiliation, but now it was turning into public vindication. The head of the Fuentes, one of the nation's most esteemed business figures, had just acknowledged my professional worth in front of the family that had dismissed me for failing to meet their shallow criteria. As the event began to wind down, my mother came to me with a rigid smile. "Lucy, dear, what a delightful surprise you've given us tonight," she declared, though her tone dripped with insincerity. "Your father and I always knew you had it in you." "Please, Mom," I said evenly, "spare me the pretense. We both know my potential only became visible when someone like Frank Fuentes acknowledged it in public." "That's not fair," she argued defensively. "We always loved you, but you chose to remove yourself." "Not fair?" I echoed incredulously. "You want to talk about fairness? How about the fact that you both altered the will to completely cut me out? Or how Dad made sure no local business would hire me?" My mother dropped her gaze, unable to face the harsh reality. "Your father only wanted what was best for the family business," she mumbled. "The best for his ego, you mean?" I corrected. "But you know what? I thank him for all of it. If you hadn't dismissed me so entirely, I wouldn't have discovered my own strength." At that point, my father joined us, his usual aura of confidence replaced by a mix of caution and concern. "Lucy," he started with an attempted conciliatory tone, "it looks like you've done quite well for yourself. I'm impressed." "No, Dad," I corrected him. "You're alarmed. You're worried that my association with Frank Fuentes might pose a threat to your business. You're worried that all those skeletons you've kept hidden will finally come to light." "I don't understand what you're hinting at," he replied tensely. "Don't you?" I countered. "What about how you took over Gabriel Vega's investment system or manipulated the Monteverde deals to boost your profits at the expense of smaller investors?" My father looked pale. "How do you know?" he started to ask, but I finished for him. "For 10 years, I've tracked every step Martinez Investments has made, every project, every acquisition, every questionable move. Do you think my role in the operation that nearly tanked your Monteverde project was purely accidental?" My father looked at me, a mix of anger and newfound respect in his eyes. For the first time, he wasn't seeing the daughter he had cast aside, but a formidable business adversary. "What do you want?" he finally inquired, using his negotiation voice for tough deals. "Now? Nothing," I replied honestly. 10 years ago, all I wanted was a family that valued me for who I was, not for how I looked. Now, I just wanted you to see what I've become in spite of you, not because of you." My mother, who had remained quiet until now, tried to ease the tension. "Lucy, darling, maybe we could sit down soon and talk this all over quietly. Family is important." "Family?" I asked her pointedly. "Family is those who accept and love you without conditions. And you were never that for me. You had very specific terms for your love, terms I didn't meet." Just then, Sarah appeared, visibly upset, her flawless makeup barely concealing she'd been crying. "What did you say to Michael?" she demanded. "He's been acting off all night, barely talking to me." "I told him the truth, Sarah," I said with a calm firmness. "Something you've never had the courage to do." "The truth?" she repeated bitterly. "You mean your version of the truth. You've always played the victim, always wanted people to feel sorry for you." Her words might have hurt me years ago, but now they only served to show how disconnected we still were as a family. "Sarah," I said gently, "your husband deserves to know the kind of family he's now a part of. If your relationship is as perfect as you pretend it to be, it will survive the truth." As I spoke, Michael joined our small group. Michael stood next to me with a serious look on his face, deliberately not choosing the spot beside Sarah. This didn't go unnoticed by anyone. "Sarah," he said with a voice that was carefully controlled, "I think we need to have a serious conversation when we get back from the honeymoon." "Michael, you can't believe anything she told you," Sarah protested, clearly upset. "You barely know her, and she's been missing for 10 years. You never even told me why," he responded. "You never mentioned having a sister until she appeared tonight. Do you realize what that says about you? About us?" The whole revenge thing was taking a path I hadn't really anticipated. I never intended to destroy Sarah and Michael's marriage just to show everyone that they hadn't succeeded in breaking me. I decided to step in. "Michael," I said, trying to defuse the situation, "I didn't come here to mess up your marriage. Sarah is complicated, sure, but that's just how all the Martinezes are. That doesn't mean she can't be a good wife." My unexpected defense took everyone by surprise, especially Sarah, who was now looking at me with a confused expression on her face. "What my family did to me was awful," I continued, "but everyone has to own up to their actions. My parents actively chose to cut me off, and Sarah just went along with it, like she always does." My father, always the one to keep up appearances, quickly jumped in. "I don't think this is the time or place for family discussions," he said, clearly worried about what the guests might think. "The guests are watching," I remarked. "Some things really never change." Frank Fuentes, who had been watching the whole thing unfold from a distance, came over to us. "Michael, Sarah," he said authoritatively, "your ride to the hotel is ready, and your flight to Paris leaves early tomorrow." Sarah, looking relieved at the interruption, took Michael's arm. "Come on, honey, it's been a long day." Michael hesitated for a moment, then turned to me. "Lucy, I'd like to keep in touch. There are things I need to understand better." I handed him my card. "Of course, I'm just a call away, Buzz." As they walked off, I could see the tension in their posture, realizing that my revelations might change their relationship for better or worse. Frank lingered for a moment longer. "Interesting family you've got, Miss Martinez," he remarked. "You have no idea," I replied. "Actually," he said with a mysterious smile, "I think I do. That's why I'm particularly interested in our professional collaboration." He lowered his voice. "Edward Martinez has been a tough competitor for years. Sometimes justice finds unexpected allies." His comment confirmed my suspicions. Frank Fuentes wasn't just impressed by my professional successes. He saw me as a potential ally against my father. Revenge was taking on a new form. "Justice can be quite diverse," I replied cautiously. "Exactly," he nodded. "My office will call you on Monday to finalize details about our collaboration." As guests started leaving, Gabriel came up to me. "Ready to go?" he asked. "Almost," I answered. "There's one last thing I need to do." I headed towards where my parents were chatting with the last of the guests, waiting until they were alone. "I'm leaving now," I announced simply. "Lucy," my father began in a tone that was unusually conciliatory, "maybe we acted too quickly in the past. You've clearly shown your worth." "My worth?" I repeated slowly. "Interesting choice of words, Dad. So now I have worth because Frank Fuentes wants to do business with me? Because I might be a threat to your company?" "Don't be so harsh," my mother cut in. "Your father is trying to build bridges." "A bridge built on self-interest," I shot back. "Not on genuine regret, but that's okay. I didn't come here for apologies or to patch things up." "Then why did you come?" my father finally asked. I looked him straight in the eye, eyes that had looked at me with disappointment so many times before. "I came to close a chapter, to show you that the so-called ugly duckling has become a stronger, more successful woman than you ever thought possible. And so you know that every time you see my name in business news, every time you lose a contract because of my advice, it's me, reminding you of what you missed out on." A heavy silence fell between us, and for the first time, I saw something like regret in my father's eyes. "It was never my intention to hurt you," he finally said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "Intentions matter less than actions," I replied, "and your actions were loud and clear." With tears in her eyes, my mother reached out to touch my arm. "Lucy, please, you're our daughter." "No, Mom," I said, stepping back. "I stopped being your daughter when you let me be pushed out of this family without saying a word. We may share blood, but family is about more than that." With those words, I turned to leave, but my father, in a rare display of vulnerability, called out, "Lucy, wait!" I turned around, seeing something in him I had never seen before. Vulnerability. "Is there any chance of fixing things?" he asked, almost in a whisper. I considered his question carefully. The revenge I had been planning for years had played out in ways I didn't expect. I didn't feel the bitter satisfaction I'd anticipated, but instead, a strange sense of freedom. "I don't know, Dad," I said honestly. 10 years of silence and rejection aren't undone by one night of forced recognition. But if you really want to try, you'll have to do something you've never done before. Value me for who I am, not just for what I can bring to you." With those words, I walked away, feeling the weight of a decade of pain begin to lift. Gabriel was waiting for me at the entrance. "Everything okay?" he asked, offering me his arm. "Surprisingly, yes," I replied, taking it. "I think I've finally stopped being the ugly graduate and become just Lucy." As I left the luxurious hotel, the fresh night air felt like a promise. The revenge I had been planning for so long had transformed into something far more powerful. True liberation. The morning after the wedding dawned clear, mirroring my newfound mental clarity. With a cup of coffee in hand, I sat on the terrace of my hotel suite, going through emails on my laptop. I felt an unexpected weight lifted off my shoulders, a liberation I hadn't felt in ages. What began as revenge had instead evolved into a profound sense of personal triumph, something no one could strip away from me. And then, my phone buzzed with a message from Gabriel. "Breakfast. I have news about the Monteverde project you might find intriguing." I couldn't help but grin. Gabriel Vega had proven to be much more than an ally of convenience in the chaos of the previous night. His insight into my father's dealings was a potential goldmine for my upcoming business maneuvers. We arranged to meet at a quaint little cafe, tucked away from the usual places my family frequented. Gabriel was already there, looking stylish even in casual wear, reviewing some papers while sipping an espresso. "Good morning," I said, settling into the chair opposite him. "I hope your info is worth an early Sunday start." He chuckled, snapping his briefcase shut. "Oh, trust me, it is. But first, how are you feeling after last night? It's not every day you face a decade of family humiliation head-on." "Surprisingly free," I confessed, realizing I'd shed a burden I hadn't known I was carrying. "Justice tends to have that effect," Gabriel agreed, "although I imagine your family is feeling something quite different this morning." "Wouldn't shock me," I replied, as the waiter set down my coffee. "My father's likely scrambling to figure out how to neutralize the new threat I pose, especially with the Fuentes alliance looming." Gabriel nudged a folder toward me. "Speaking of which, I've gathered all the documents on the Monteverde project's irregularities. Your father didn't just fudge contracts, there's proof of bribing city officials to hasten permits." I pored over the papers with keen interest. This was dynamite, the kind of evidence that could not only tarnish Martinez Investments' reputation, but also lead to legal repercussions. "How did you get all this?" I asked, genuinely impressed. "Let's just say I wasn't the only one who left the company feeling bitter," he replied. "I've kept in touch with others who, like me, have documented every misstep over the years." As I delved deeper into the documents, my phone rang with an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Lucy Martinez?" A voice I didn't recognize asked. "Yes, who's this?" "I'm Claudia, Frank Fuentes' assistant. Mr. Fuentes would like to meet with you this afternoon, if possible. Something urgent has come up." I glanced at Gabriel, intrigued. "Sure. When and where?" "At his main office at 3 p.m. I'll text you the address." After hanging up, I shared the details with Gabriel. "Looks like our weekend of revelations isn't over yet. Frank Fuentes doesn't usually work Sundays unless it's something big," Gabriel remarked. "Or potentially lucrative." At 3 o'clock sharp, I found myself in the sleek confines of the Fuentes Corporation building, with Claudia leading me to the main office. The place exuded power and success, a stark contrast to the flashy style my father preferred. Frank Fuentes greeted me with professional courtesy, and to my surprise, Michael was also there, looking haggard and red-eyed. "Lucy, thanks for coming on such short notice," Frank began. "The situation is quite sensitive." Michael jumped in. "I've canceled the honeymoon," he said in a hollow tone, devoid of newlywed joy. "What? Why?" I asked, truly surprised. "I hadn't meant to ruin their marriage, just to uncover the truth about my family." "After we talked last night, I confronted Sarah," Michael explained. "Gave her a chance to tell her side of the story, but instead, she confirmed everything you said and more. They shunned you not just for not fitting their image, but Sarah took an active role in your estrangement." Frank chimed in. "Normally, I'd stay out of personal matters, but this has business implications." "How so?" I asked, trying to see why I was part of what seemed like a personal issue. "Sarah revealed that your father has been exploiting privileged information to manipulate some acquisitions," Frank explained. Details that Michael shared in confidence, thinking he was talking to his wife, not an insider for Edward Martinez. Michael looked crushed. "I was naive. I thought I was sharing business plans with my future wife, not an industrial spy for your father." The revelation floored me. My sister not only played a part in my exile from the family, but also betrayed her husband's trust for our father's sake. "The quintessential toxic family," I murmured, more to myself. "Exactly," Frank nodded. "And now we have a problem. Sensitive info about our strategies is in your father's hands, jeopardizing millions in investments." "And my role in this?" I asked, though I had a hunch. "We need your help," Frank said bluntly. "Your knowledge of how Edward Martinez operates, paired with your financial restructuring expertise, could be vital to limit the damage. Plus," Michael added, "you're the only family member who's shown integrity throughout this." The irony struck me hard. The family that had cast me aside now faced the fallout of their duplicity, and I, the outcast, was seen as a potential savior. "I get it," I replied carefully. "But what does this mean for Sarah? She's still my sister, despite everything." Michael stared out the window, avoiding eye contact. "She's staying at your parents' house. I asked for space to reconsider our marriage." "And legally?" I asked Frank. "We're exploring options," he replied. "But if we confirm deliberate misuse of insider info, we'll pursue legal action." A shiver ran through me. The revenge I'd fantasized about for years was unfolding in ways I never imagined, with potentially sweeping consequences for my entire biological family. "I need time to think," I finally said. "This is more than a simple business collapse." "Oration." Frank nodded understandingly. "Of course, but don't take too long. Every hour counts when there are leaks." I left the meeting with a storm of thoughts swirling. On one hand, the poetic justice was undeniable. You know, the family that once put me through the ringer was now experiencing their own very public downfall. But there I was, wondering if I really wanted to be the one to completely ruin them. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was a number I hadn't seen pop up in 10 years. It was my mom, Lucy. Her voice came across as so broken I almost didn't recognize it. "We need to talk. It's an emergency," she said, and the sheer desperation in her tone caught me off guard. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your father had a heart attack. He's in the hospital," she explained, and in that moment, my whole world felt like it was on pause. Despite everything, the news hit me hard. "Is it serious?" I asked, feeling a lump form in my throat. "The doctors say it is, but he's stable. Lucy, he's been asking for you," she shared. And just like that, I was at a loss for words. Edward Martinez, the man who had practically erased me from our family, was now reaching out in his weakest moment. "I'll come," I said simply, and ended the call. The hospital was the very one where I'd been born 32 years ago. Walking through those sterile hallways, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world, deciding whether to forgive, seek revenge, or just try to find closure to move forward. In the waiting room, I saw Sarah. Her makeup was all smudged, and her face was a picture of despair. When she noticed me, she stood cautiously, unsure whether to come closer or keep her distance. "She's here," she said, talking to my mom, who was sitting in the corner. My mom approached me, looking way older than she had the last time we'd met. "Thanks for coming," she whispered, holding my hands. "It means a lot." "I'm not here for you," I said honestly. "Even after everything, he's still my dad." Sarah couldn't look me in the eye anymore. "Michael's told you everything, I guess," she muttered. "Yeah," I replied, "but I'm curious. Why'd you do it, Sarah? Why betray your own husband?" "Dad asked me to," she whispered. "He said it was crucial for the company's future, that it was my duty as a daughter." "And you always do your duty, don't you?" I said, not maliciously, just stating a fact. "Even when that meant pushing your sister aside." Sarah started crying softly. "I'm sorry, Lucy. I was selfish and cowardly. I never meant—" Before she could finish, a doctor interrupted, addressing me. "Miss Martinez, your father is conscious and wants to see you. Only you." The room was dim, illuminated only by the weak glow of the monitors tracking my dad's vital signs. Edward Martinez, this imposing figure who'd always seemed unbreakable, was now just a frail man lying in bed, hooked up to a bunch of machines. "Lucy," he whispered as I entered. His voice, once so commanding, was now barely there. "You came?" "Yes, Dad," I said, sitting by his side. "I'm here." We sat in silence. It was heavy, filled with 10 years of hurt, absence, and rejection. "The doctors say I'll pull through," he eventually said, "but it's made me think." I nodded, unsure what to say. Part of me was still that wounded girl longing for his approval. Another part was the strong woman I'd become, in spite of him. "Lucy," he went on, struggling, "how we treated you was unforgivable." His admission shocked me. In my 32 years, Edward had never owned up to a mistake, let alone sought forgiveness. "Why now, Dad?" I asked. "Because you're in a hospital bed, or because I'm now a threat to your business?" My question seemed to hit him hard. "I deserve that," he admitted. "All your distrust and anger, I've earned it." He took a long breath. "After you left the wedding last night, I argued with Sarah. She spilled everything about Michael and the info she got, and something in me just broke. I realized what I'd done to my family and to myself." His eyes, now filled with emotion, met mine. "Lucy, literally, my heart was breaking for what I had turned into." I tried to keep up my walls, not wanting to let his words get to me, but they were chipping away at my defenses. I've built my whole life around appearances, power, prestige. I wanted a perfect image, and I lost my daughter in the process. I missed out on knowing the amazing woman you grew into. A tear slipped down his cheek. "Last night, when Frank Fuentes praised you, I didn't feel threatened. I felt proud, but I know I have no right to that pride because you succeeded in spite of me, not because of me." I stayed quiet, trying to soak in his words and search for the sincerity I'd yearned for. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "I just want you to know I finally understand what I did wrong." I took a deep breath, trying to manage the storm of emotions flooding me. "What about the info Sarah got from Michael?" I asked. "Were you really going to use it against Fuentes Corporation?" My dad shook his head weakly. "That was the plan. But after last night I realized what I'd become. I told Sarah we can't use it, that we need to do things right for one." "And does she believe you?" I asked, doubtful. "No," he chuckled sadly. "Too many years of watching me play dirty. That's why she told Michael everything this morning. She wanted to protect him from me." This revelation caught me off guard. Sarah had finally broken away from the cycle of deceit our father had created. "Sarah's a wreck," I commented, scared of losing Michael. "And rightly so," my father replied. "I taught her success and appearances were always valued above integrity, and now she's facing the consequences of learning that lesson." Suddenly, a gentle knock on the door broke our discussion. It was a nurse, kindly letting us know, "Excuse me, but the patient needs some rest." I got up to leave, but my father weakly took my hand. "Lucy, before you go, there's something you should know," he said. "I've changed the will. Again. I've reinstated your share of the inheritance, just like it should have been all along. Not because you need it now, but because it's only fair." I looked into his eyes, searching for any signs of manipulation, but all I saw was genuine regret. "It's not about the money, Dad," I said softly. "It never was." He nodded, understanding. "I get it. It's about recognition, about feeling validated, about justice," he agreed. I nodded silently back, leaving the room with a swirl of emotions. In the waiting room, Sarah jumped up as soon as she saw me. "How's he doing?" she asked anxiously. "Stable," I replied, adding, "and surprisingly lucid." My mother approached, a bit timidly. "Lucy, can we talk for a bit?" she asked, her voice hesitant. We moved to a quieter corner. My mother, who had always been my father's silent shadow, now seemed to struggle with words. Finally she started, "I never defended you," her voice breaking. "I never opposed your father when he pushed you away. It's my greatest shame, my biggest failure as a mother." Her sincerity hit me hard. "Why, Mom?" I asked, letting out the question that had been tormenting me for years. "Why did you let it happen?" Her answer was simple. "Fear, a fear of your father, fear of being alone, fear of losing the security he provided." She paused, wiping her tears. What I didn't realize until last night is that I had already lost something far more valuable: my integrity as a mother, my relationship with you. Her words opened a door I had kept closed for years, allowing a touch of understanding, if not full forgiveness, to creep into my heart. "I can't change the past, Lucy," she continued, "but if you give me the chance, I'd like to be part of your future, to get to know you again as the extraordinary woman you've become." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a message from Gabriel. "Urgent news about Fuentes. Call me when you can." "I need to make a call," I told my mother. "We'll talk later." I stepped away to call Gabriel. "What's happening?" I asked as soon as he picked up. "Frank Fuentes just called an emergency meeting with his top executives," Gabriel informed me. "Despite Sarah's confession, he's moving forward with legal action against your father." "Are you sure?" I asked, feeling new tension rising inside me. "Absolutely. My source inside the company is trustworthy. Frank sees this as a chance to permanently weaken Martinez investments." The justice I had been seeking for so long now loomed as the potential downfall of my biological family. Was that what I really wanted? "Thanks for the info, Gabriel," I replied. "I need to think about my next steps." I returned to my mother and Sarah, who were watching me expectantly. "I have to go," I announced. "There are urgent matters I need to handle." "Will you come back?" my mother asked, hope barely concealed in her voice. I paused for a moment before saying, "Yes, I'll come back," surprising myself with the promise. 3 hours later, I found myself in Frank Fuentes' office. The real estate tycoon greeted me with evident surprise. "Lucy, I wasn't expecting you today," he said, indicating I should take a seat. "How's your father?" "Stable," I replied, "and clear-headed enough to make some important decisions." Frank looked at me curiously. "What brings you here unexpectedly?" "I've got a proposal," I said directly. "One that'll benefit Fuentes Corporation without resorting to legal action against Martinez Investments." "I'm listening," Frank said, resting his hands on his desk. "I propose a strategic partnership between Altus Consultants and the real estate development arm of Martinez Investments. With my company as the go-between, we could forge a mutually beneficial alliance. You'd gain access to Martinez's most promising projects without the legal turmoil of a hostile takeover, and my father would retain some influence over his business legacy." Frank studied me closely. "An interesting offer, but why should I consider it when I have the chance to wipe out a competitor?" "Because, while business revenge can be immediately satisfying, strategic alliances create lasting benefits," I countered. "Plus, my familiarity with both organizations ensures a smooth transition, free from the usual conflicts of a hostile takeover." "And your father is on board with this?" Frank asked, somewhat skeptical. "I haven't formally presented the idea to him yet, but given the situation, I'm sure he'll see the wisdom in it," I explained. Frank pondered this, drumming his fingers on the table. "I've always favored innovation over destruction," he finally admitted. "Draft up the details of this merger, and we'll go over them. But Lucy," he added earnestly, "if this is just a stalling tactic—" "It's not," I assured him. "It's a genuine win-win solution, even for Michael." At the mention of his son, Frank nodded slowly. "My son's really shaken by Sarah's betrayal," he confessed, "but also conflicted. Despite everything, he still seems to care for her." "Love is messy," I replied. "People make mistakes, but sometimes they deserve another shot." Leaving Fuentes Corporation, my next stop was the hospital. My father was awake, looking considerably better than he had earlier. "Lucy," he greeted me with a weak smile as I walked in. "You came back." "I told you I would," I replied, sitting beside his bed. "And I've got a business plan to discuss." As I laid out the merger idea, I noticed his expression change, blending professional respect with personal remorse. "It's brilliant," he admitted once I finished. "A graceful solution that salvages the business without sacrificing the future." He paused, looking at me with newfound admiration. "You've always been the sharpest in the family, Lucy," he said. "I regret being too blind to see it." "It's not just about being smart, Dad," I said. "It's about having integrity. It's about doing business with principles, not just trying to manipulate others." My father nodded slowly, acknowledging a lesson he'd come to realize a bit late in life. He took my hand with a surprisingly firm grip. "I accept your proposal," he said, "not just as a way to save the company, but as the first step to rebuild something much more important, our family." The following days were a whirlwind of activity, filled with meeting after meeting, stacks of legal documents to wade through, and complicated negotiations. Gabriel turned out to be an invaluable ally through it all, bringing his vast experience and impressive contacts to the table, helping to structure the merger. Against all odds, the plan started to come together, with both corporations recognizing the immense potential of the strategic alliance. A week later, as I was ironing out some final details in my office, I got an unexpected visit. "Sorry for showing up unannounced," Sarah said timidly, standing at the doorway. My assistant had let her in. I gestured for her to take a seat, noticing how tired she looked, with dark circles under her eyes. The always polished Sarah seemed finally human in her vulnerability. "Michael and I are in couples therapy," she revealed after an awkward pause. He says he wants to try, but needs time to trust again. I'm really happy for you, I replied sincerely. You both deserve a chance to rebuild on more honest foundations. Sarah looked at me with tear-filled eyes. I always envied you, you know, even when you were considered the ugly one in the family, she confessed, catching me off guard. Envied me? Why? I asked. For your freedom, she said. For your ability to just be yourself without stressing over Dad's expectations. I've always lived to please him, to keep my place as the favorite, and in doing so, I lost sight of who I truly am. Her admission opened my eyes to a perspective of our family dynamics I'd never fully understood before. Sarah, the perfect one, the favorite, had been just as trapped by family expectations as I had. It's never too late to find your own voice, Sarah, I told her gently. That's exactly what I'm trying to do now, she nodded. And I wanted to thank you for the merger. Dad told me about your proposal. You're saving our family after how we treated you. I'm not just doing it for the family, I clarified. I'm doing it because it's the best business decision, and because, despite everything, I believe in giving second chances. Sarah stood up to leave, but paused at the door. Do you think we can and ever truly be sisters, Lucy? Not just tied by blood, but by choice? Her question surprised me. For years, I had seen Sarah as the antagonist in my life story, the perfect princess who had reaped the benefits while I was pushed aside. But now, I saw her as a woman striving to break free from the same toxic patterns I had battled against. I think we can try, I answered honestly, one day at a time. 3 months later, the merger had been successfully completed. Altus Martinez Fuentes emerged as a real estate powerhouse, crafting innovative projects that combined the strengths of the 3 companies involved. My father, now recovered from his heart attack, took on a consultative role, for the first time stepping back into the background. Our family bonds were still a work in progress. Those uncomfortable lunches were slowly evolving into genuine conversations. Old wounds were beginning to heal, though some scars would remain, reminding us of what had happened. One afternoon, I got a call from Michael. Lucy, he began without preamble, I wanted to personally thank you. The merger is a massive success, and my father can't stop raving about your strategic vision. I'm thrilled it's working out for everyone, I replied. It's not just on a business level, Michael continued. It's personal, too. Sarah is changing. The therapy is making a difference. We're rebuilding on more honest foundations, just like you said. I'm genuinely happy for both of you, I said. In fact, Michael added lighter now, we're hosting a small dinner this Saturday. Nothing formal, just close family. Sarah insisted I invite you personally. Close family, I repeated, tasting the irony. 10 years ago, I had been shut out from that inner circle, and now here I was, being invited directly. Will you come? Michael asked. It'd mean a lot to everyone. I thought back to the insecure young woman I once was, the ugly graduate my father had turned away. I thought about the strong woman I had grown into, capable not only of achieving success on my own terms, but also of extending second chances. Yes, I finally replied, I'll be there. After hanging up, I turned to gaze out to my office window, taking in the city's skyline. The revenge I had once plotted out so meticulously had shifted into something far more powerful. The ability to rebuild my life on my terms, refusing to let the past dictate my future. I was no longer the rejected daughter yearning for approval. I was Lucy Martinez, a woman who had forged her own path, found her own voice, and created her own brand of justice. On my desk, I kept Sarah's wedding invitation, now framed as a token of the day everything shifted. Beside it was a recent photo of my father, mother, Sarah, Michael, and me at the inauguration ceremony of our first joint project. We weren't the picture-perfect family my father had once tried to create, but we were real, flawed, and healing. Perhaps that was the truest form of revenge. Not destruction, but transformation. Not just of my family, but of myself. Some stories go beyond just being stories. They're reflections of real life. If this one resonated with you, please help us continue sharing tales that deserve to be heard. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.